Welcome to the Andrew Holland Podcast, where we explore the stories of successful people, get insight and advice from individuals who have accomplished amazing things, and dive deep into understanding ourselves as human beings. Now, here's your host, Andrew Holland.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Andrew Holland Podcast. We have a very special guest, Arash Vossoughi, joining us. Arash, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's great to be here.
So you started Voss Coaching Co., and you provide elite level mentoring and coaching for anyone and everyone that really wants to, quite frankly, become millionaires and establish personal success.
Yeah, we work with people really to activate their potential. So everyone is at different levels. What I found out, our main avatar is inspirationally dissatisfied people. They want more, they don't know how to do it. So I've been in the industry for 17 years now. And, it's my passion. I always give credit to my mentor. I got mentored by Bob Proctor. We worked together side by side for 15 years, and he really taught me a lot of what I know, and he did it the same way with his mentor, and it's paying it forward. I watch people all the time settle, and there's so much potential inside everybody. And I want my job as a mentor is to open that up for them and show them exactly what to do and how to do it. So we teach a lot of people how to create wealth, not just financial, but on all spectrums. Because you'll see a lot of people, I'm sure you know people who have a lot of money and they're the poorest people you'll ever know. So for me, it's really based on creating the whole wheel of wealth, peace of mind, freedom. Emotional freedom is the big thing. Because once you're emotionally free, you allow your creativity to go, and that's where the magic happens.
I love that approach because I think in our society, in this day and age, we focus so much on the financial aspect.
Mm-hmm.
But quite frankly, if you look at a large portion of the wealthy and ultra wealthy, they're miserable because they haven't focused on some of those other elements that are so key to having a well-rounded wealth status, if you will, psychologically, emotionally. Before we get into that, and I want to dig into that deeper and exactly what you do for individuals and what you would recommend for our listeners who are trying to accomplish something meaningful, whether they're a high performing athlete, whether they're trying to start a business, whether they've been in business for a long time and they are where you're talking about, they're not quite achieving what they're trying to. Before we dig into that, take us back. Where were you born and raised? Give us a sense of your childhood and how that has had an impact on what you do today and how you help people.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I was raised in San Jose, California, and I was raised middle class, and I had a great childhood. I think I'm doing what I'm doing right now. Really, when I look back, I lost my father when I was 15. My family and I dealt with cancer. My mom had it. She fought breast cancer for 30 years when I was in seventh grade. I lost my dad when I was the summer going into my junior year. And I think you could go over two different paths. I chose the optimistic path. So I could look back now knowing what I know and go back because I was never a victim towards those circumstances. But it did make me grow up faster. I think I became a lot more introspective. And now, if you would have ever met me back then, I would have never thought that I'd be a speaker, be constantly in the public, delivering 3-day events, 5-day events. Because I remember when I was in high school, I was telling this story a few weeks ago. I had to do a speech my junior year, and I did a speech that Charles Barkley was the best basketball player of that season. 3 minutes of the 5-minute speech was a video because I wanted nothing to do with speaking publicly.
Yep.
But that's where my identity was. That's where my self-esteem was back then. I was shy, and I wasn't introverted, but I was definitely shy back then. So, but I think adversity is so good for people. A lot of people hate adversity, but adversity is what grows you. We never grow in our wins, we grow in our losses. So, I had an extreme loss. Everybody's had loss. Everybody's had some sort of trauma. Now, I'm 47, so if I go meet another 40-some-year-old, everybody's had some type of trauma, but the trauma, you don't want it to be your story. And a lot of people make their trauma their story so they never get through it. We want to let our vision be our story. How do you want to live? What do you really want? What type of life do you want and who do you want to become? And you know, when I was growing up, I would tell everyone I had a great childhood. I really look back at my childhood excellent. I had great parents, had a great brother. My brother and I are very close, and I had great friends. I played a lot of sports, which I think at a high level, I was very competitive, that really activated just constantly wanting to get better. That I was fearless at a young age. I would play against kids 3 years older, 5 years older, and I would never back down. So I think that was the way of life back then. You had to really show up or else you weren't going to play. That was just the deal. So I think all those all those things that happened for me really happened in such a benefit for me.
When you think back, you said you had a choice. You could either take the victim mentality or you could look at it from an optimistic perspective. Why do you think an individual chooses one of those versus the other? Because we see in so many situations someone taking the opposite course, especially in this day and age. Victimhood seems to be almost, I don't want to say the majority, but it seems to be a default in at least
Mhm.
in a lot of experiences that I have in society. Tell us about that.
I can't answer why I took it. I think it was part of my DNA. Always looked at things at the positive side of the street. So I don't know. Like I can't, I just knew there was one choice. If I was going to take the victim, I would have been miserable for 10 years at least. And I chose to look at it that everything happens for a reason. It wasn't an easy time, but that was the road that I took. And it's interesting. You talk about victim. I believe there's two type of people. There's victims or there's leaders. There's no in between. And I've never found an easier time to win in the world right now because there's so many victims. They're blaming everybody. They're blaming the outside. They're blaming their value based on somebody else doesn't value them. So if you look at it and ask yourself, how many people do you know that are absolutely emanating excellence? And if you ask that question, you'll say, I know a few. And you'll say, how many people do you know take extreme responsibility for their life, that they're the only problem, only solution they have? And you'll say, not many. So you could see the people who go to the leadership side and take control of their life, what a competitive advantage they have right now. Because I don't disagree with you. I think victimhood is rampant right now. But if we go on the other end of it, and if someone's listening to this and saying, I am a victim, say, ask yourself this question, why? Like I ask a lot of questions. Questions gives us answers. But if we ask ourselves, is that coming from an old story that's outdated? Is that coming from it's just easier to shrink? A lot of people are shrinking, they don't have to. We have such a reservoir inside of us of greatness. Like I can't give you greatness, you already have it. I can activate it in you, but I can't give you something you already have. So we want to come and understand what good is it going to do to be a victim? Nothing.
So I just heard you say you're not sure why you chose the optimistic mentality. And I'm a voracious reader.
Mhm.
There's a podcast that I listen to called Founders Only that has is just fantastic. And it goes through biographies basically. And if you haven't heard of it, you would love it. And a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, people who have accomplished amazing things in the past, again, secularly speaking, were voracious readers and they learned from history. But they often say, focus on or surround yourself rather, with people that are optimistic. What if you're inherently pessimistic? And I know people like that, and I'm not one of them, so it's hard for me to get into their mindset. But you just said everybody has greatness within them. But if your default genetically, I think you're genetically an optimist. I'm genetically an optimist. But what if I put myself in someone else's shoes where that's genetically I'm just a pessimist? What would you say to someone like that?
Well, somebody like that can change. It's a skill, just like riding a bike. You make conscious contact with who you want to be. So you could take the most negative people. I've had them as clients, and I've turned them. Now they're the most optimistic, positive person. But we've got to understand attitude. That's what we're talking about here. And see, attitude is not somebody that's optimistic. They could still be operating from a negative mental attitude if they're looking at what's missing. They're coming from lack and limitation. A positive mental attitude is somebody who's looking in the good in everything. They're bulletproofing their perception. See, we're all seeing the world how we're programmed. So a pessimist, that goes generational. That goes in their DNA, but they could be the outlier. But they have to work on it. See, our attitude is a combination of our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. It's not just our thoughts, and it's not just our thoughts and feelings. It's all three. But we have an attitude towards everything. So all your listeners listening to your podcast, they keep coming back because they love it. That's an attitude. If you look at somebody's financial DNA, what they're earning is an attitude that they have towards money. If you look at somebody with low self-esteem, high self-esteem, that's the attitude they have of themselves. So a pessimist can change their attitude. Will it be easy? No. But is it essential? Yes. Because being a pessimist is only going to take you backwards. Because the pessimist is always looking at what's wrong. So if we're looking at what's wrong becomes our goal. Our mind will constantly show you what's wrong. So I always tell people the first thing to do is become a master at accepting and rejecting your ideas from your future self. Who is the person I want to be? And when you do that, you build discipline. I used to have such a bad attitude towards discipline. I would start, stop. And my mentor said to me, you've never had the proper direction. And you've never had accountability. And he said, accountability is a success insurance policy. And I never had anyone talk to me like this. It activated in me that I wanted to change. For my 20s, I was doing fine, but I had nothing to show for it. And that's when I wanted to find something different. I wanted something better. You talk about being an avid reader. I'm an avid reader. I've read well over now 700 books. Well over. And I think that's an underestimate because I constantly, I was who I coach now. I was inspirationally dissatisfied. Like if you would have looked at the results on the outside, they were, I would say, average. I was earning a low six-figure income. I had a great family. I have a lot of friends. So that wasn't it. But I knew there was something more. There was something more. See, the pessimist knows there's something more. But we got to wake them up. And if we wake them up, they have just as much potential as anybody who's created extraordinary impact in the world. And so the pessimist can turn into an optimist.
So let's use you as a case study. What were you doing? What was your career prior to Voss Coaching Co.?
Well, I was in the corporate world, and I took myself from the bottom to the top of the company. I was working outside sales in the bottled water industry. And what happened for me is I got a hold of this information and I just fell in love with it, the philosophy I teach. And I remember I was watching one day a PBS special. It was Wayne Dyer. And I said, some voice inside me said, you could do that. And I rejected it right away because I knew I didn't like public speaking. I was rejected right away, but I loved the content. So I started digging deep and digging deep. Anyway, I took myself from the bottom of the company to the top. The person who hired me, I ended up becoming his boss. I became vice president of sales. So I started at that time, give you an idea, earning 24,000 a year. Then I topped out a little over 100. But I knew there was more. So I kept studying this information, studying it. The only person that I ever reported to was the president of the company. And the president of the company, I heard these rumors that they were going to sell. And I asked him, I said, "Are you selling?" I was about to get married a few weeks later. And he said, "No, you have my word. We're not selling." I would tell you. The next day they sold. And I'm walking out to my car. And at first I was a victim. I was like, they lied to me. They did this. And I said, then this voice came in and said, "Stop giving your power to everybody else." They said, "They're not the problem. You're the problem." My philosophy literally changed on that walk to the car. I always call it was what woke me up. Like you have these aha moments. And I'd been studying very avidly for 3 years, but I hadn't created any results. So I was at that time, I had this voice that says, "Do not accept the new company's offer." And there was nothing in my outside world that should have done that. I was 150,000 in debt. I was about to get married. I come home and there's a foreclosure sticker on my garage. And it was big orange, like it was embarrassing, right?
How old are you at this point?
I'm 30.
Okay.
30 at this point. And I remember I called my wife, my fiance at the time, and I said, "I'm not accepting that offer." And she said, "Are we going to be okay?" I said, "We'll be okay. We'll figure it out." Now, I didn't know that. But the interesting thing, the next few days, I'd never felt more free. I had never felt more free. And then I realized freedom has nothing to do with financial. It's emotional because I wasn't doing what I was meant to be doing. So I went in and I found a mentor, and it happened very organically. This is literally right after I decided not to accept the new offer. And I was talking to an acquaintance of mine who introduced me to the mentor, who became an enormous mentor, who became one of my closest friends, and Bob Proctor. And he said, "What is it that you really want?" And I said, "I'm not sure." And I said, "I want to live a life of freedom." And he said, "What does that mean to you?" I said, "I want to live my life doing what I love whenever I want and live it on my choices." And he said, "So you do know what you want?" And he said, "Are you willing to do exactly what I tell you to do?" And I said, "I'm not sure." I said, "I'm a great starter and a terrible finisher." I was so explicitly honest. And he said, "If you do exactly what I tell you, not half, not three-fourth, in 24 months, your life is going to look much different." And there was nothing at that time. I didn't know how much it was going to cost, but there was nothing at that time that I should have said yes. And I said yes right away. And I think to this day, what if I would have said no? What if I would have said, "Let me talk to my fiance. Let me talk to get other people's advice." You just know. And people ask me this all the time. They said, "Why'd you say yes?" And I always say, I knew I had to leverage my ignorance. And I kept studying all these books. They said, find a mentor and do exactly what they tell you to do. I think one of the best advices that he ever taught me was early on. And he said, "You can have anything you really want if you commit to it and you do exactly what I tell you to do." And he said, "I'm telling you, my mentor taught me that." So from that moment, I did literally exactly what he told me to do. I've never done that my whole life. I was a terrible follower. I became a great follower.
Take us back. You say yes. There's got to be a little bit of feeling of terror because you don't necessarily know what you just committed to. But you're ambitious, you're excited because it's going to be a different direction than the corporate world you've been in. Take us back to that moment, the emotions you had, and then what did Bob tell you specifically to do week 1, week 2, week 3? Go through that briefly for us.
The interesting thing is I did not have tear, which was interesting because you think I would. And I really didn't because I felt like, what if this works? Now, I will tell you, did I think it was going to work? I did not. Because you got to understand, for 3 years, I spent a lot of money, I invested a lot of time, and I created no results. And I'll tell you what switched for me. I know it like it was yesterday. He told me, he said, you don't know this, you know about it. He said, all I have to do is look at your results. See, I could look at anyone now and I can observe their results. It tells me a story of what they're committed to. The results always tell you how well you understand something. Stephen Covey has a great quote. He says, to know and not do is not to know. That was me. I knew information. I had a lot of information, but I was not implementing it. And so in the beginning, the first thing Bob had me do is write out an exact vision of how I wanted to live. And I put it in the present tense like it was already here. And I wrote it out and I kept fine-tuning it, changing it, fine-tuning it. What happened is I started recording it and listening to it every day. Well, I started believing it, which is interesting. And that gave me confidence. So I started creating these little wins. And then we worked on my self-image. Because he told me this early on. He said, if you don't have a significant self-image, nobody can win because we can never outperform our image. And so I started, instead of looking at my insecurities as a bad thing, I started realizing my insecurities are my greatest gifts. So I started knocking them out one at a time. And I started getting out of my comfort zone because our deal was you have to be out of your comfort zone because it's not how much you read, it's what you do. So you want to turn the information into awareness. See, a lot of people are sitting there. They say, I want this, but they're not acting on it. They don't accept the idea. I accepted it. And within 3 months, I went from 0 to 10,000 a month. So I started being able to breathe again. And within 7 months, I went from 10,000 to 25,000 a month. At the end of the first year, I increased my income by 32,000. But what happened is I changed my philosophy of life. I stopped accepting things that I used to accept. They were sabotaging. And I remember at the time I was working for a medical sales company, but I promised myself I was never going to be an employee again because I never wanted to give that power away to somebody again. So I was an independent contractor. And I told them that I needed to quit because it wasn't what I wanted to do. And then Bob and I took such a liking to each other, and he asked me to partner up with him. And I told him I have this other thing, and he said, you can keep it. I said, no, that's a double binding message. So I quit. The medical sales company kept wanting to give me a raise, and I just said no because I felt like it would keep me distracted from what my real purpose is. Now, at this time, I had changed my life. It might not sound like a lot, but from being 150,000 in debt to turning it into a positive 282,000 in a year was a big deal for me. I got rid of all my debt. And what's interesting is I had a great relationship with the debt. I said, I can't do anything about the past. I can only pivot forward. So my whole mind was on creating financial freedom so I can create stability. I used to chase money because I didn't have an understanding of what money is. And I learned you attract it by the person you become. So I started building all these habits as a part of my new self-image. And all of a sudden, I started doing what I loved. Then I became really good at what I did because when you focus on building your skill set up, the results happen by default. And that's what happened for me. But I became obsessed with getting better. I became obsessed with learning human behavior. And I started changing them one at a time. Now, the old me used to overcommit and underdeliver. So I'd say, I'm going to do these 10 things, and then I'd do them for a day and then maybe 2 days and then drop off. So then I started thinking about it. I'm only going to focus on 3 things. So I created a philosophy that less is more. See, our paradigm tells us the opposite. You got to work more hours. You've got to you've really got to sacrifice your family time. I did none of that. I had worked less than what I did in the corporate world, and then my income increased 25 times over a 5-year period. But the income to me is just a report card of the good you're doing in the marketplace. So I stopped chasing it. And what I did is I 10x my personal development. That's what I did. If somebody wants to improve their life, they have to improve their personal development. So that's what I did.
Let's get some specificity about a number of those things that you just talked about. I want to go back to you talked about image and how important your image is. What does that mean holistically, your image? You're not talking about just how you look physically, although that may be a part of it. Give us some more specific details about, okay, this is Arash right now and my current image, and this is the Arash that I want to be in the image I want to have. How did you break that down to get to where you wanted to go, focusing on image?
Well, image has nothing to do with the outside. It's all inside. It's an inside game. It's the most important picture we have of ourselves. We all have an image. So if you observe your results in all areas of your life, it'll tell you what your image is in each area. So it's a combination of our self-perception, our self-esteem, and our self-confidence. That's what image is. See, if you watch somebody's behavior, it'll reflect their image. If you watch somebody's action steps, it reflects their image. So the first thing I did was I studied this book. It's called Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. He was a plastic surgeon. And he used to go and give people, all plastic surgery, and they'd come back and they wouldn't feel any better. So he couldn't understand it. So he started studying it. And so, in my opinion, the best book ever written on self-image psychology is Psycho-Cybernetics. So I studied it. But there was one line that just changed it for me. He said, you can never outperform your self-image. So I thought, well, if I want to do better, if I want to live better, I've got to go understand this self-image psychology. So the first thing I did was I had to change my attitude towards myself, how I saw myself. So I had to do a lot of work on self-love. I had to do a lot of work on releasing judgment and shame. And I had to do a lot of work on writing out the person I wanted to be. So I took my goal and I started studying people who had already achieved that type of goal. But I would study them like a scientist. I would watch how they walked. I would watch how they dressed. I would watch how their tone was. And then where do they go to dinner? So I would go to these places and just watch people because I wanted to observe it. Like when I tell you I took this seriously, I took it seriously because people are sabotaging themselves every day because they don't understand the importance of it. And once I started understanding the importance of it, I never looked at, oh God, I have a bad self-image. I said, how can I improve it? So then I wrote out a statement of the image of the person I wanted to be in the present tense. I'm so happy and grateful now that every cell of my being is looking for the good in everything. I'm getting better and better, more effective at what I do. Confidence oozes from me. I'm doing what I love and loving what I do, and I never settle for less than I want. So I became every word of that statement. Well, once I got it impressed into my subconscious mind, all of a sudden the type of action started changing. That's how I knew my image was changing. And I'll tell you a story. Like when Bob and I partnered up, give you an idea of image, he asked me to come introduce him. And you got to understand, he's the icon. Like he'd been doing it for 50 years at the time. And I was nervous to go introduce him. That was my image. And he comes and he looks at my tie and he goes, who the hell taught you how to tie a tie? I said, I don't know how to tie a tie. I went to my brother's closet. I went to his house and I slipped it on. And he said, I'm going to teach you how to tie a tie. But he said, the first thing you want to do, we got to change how you dress. So I started changing how I dressed. And now I love dressing up. I love sports coats. And at the end of his life, we were doing a training with our elite clients and he took a picture. He goes, look how much your image has changed from the beginning. So I started working. I started working at it, but I always work at it because our future results are impacted by my image today, what I'm willing to do, how I'm willing to think, what I'm willing to speak about. Like if you watch anyone's language, you'll know what they're creating by default in the future. If you just pay attention to how somebody speaks, most people are speaking on what's missing. They're speaking on what they're getting in the present. We want to speak into existence how we really want to live. There's a great book called The Magic of Thinking Big. And David Schwartz was the author. And he said, we're either speaking castles into existence or we're speaking our grave into existence. So once I changed my language, everything started changing. But I never looked at it, I wonder how long this is going to take. I committed to the craft. I committed to getting better. And I believe we all are on this planet to serve and to live the way we want to live. And that's what I really believe. I have taken people who have been down and out and are now free through the same process that I took myself through and that my mentor took me through. So, but we have to understand, we have to have goals. We're goal-seeking organisms. Every day when we drove, like when I drove here, I didn't just drive aimlessly. I had a picture in my mind and I had a goal. But if you watch somebody with a bad attitude, they don't have a goal. If you watch somebody stuck, they don't have a goal. Without a goal, there's no reason to build discipline. There's no reason to elevate our standard. There's no reason to have a new life philosophy.
It's like trying to drive somewhere without a destination. I mean, that's exactly what it is. If you don't know where you're trying to get to, well, then how do you know where to drive or what route to take? One of the things I want to get a little bit more specific about are actions. You can look at someone, and you do this with your clients, someone that just came to you, and you can tell almost instantly, I imagine, by what they're saying, their results, what you need to work on with them. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, very accurate.
Give us a specific example, not of, don't name the client, but for those of us listening and learning about what you're talking about so that we can fully embrace it and we can do some self-reflection. What's the first step you're looking for in someone, or a few of the characteristics that you're looking for that says, okay, number one, self-image really needs to be worked on. Mm-hmm. Number two, we need to talk about goals. And number three, we need to align those to get them to where they ultimately want to be.
The first thing that I do is I listen. And you want to listen with your emotions. Most people are listening to talk. So if you listen with your emotions and ask the proper questions, so my question is always this: what is it that you really want? And they'll tell me, well, I'm not sure. Then I'll say, okay, tell me what you don't want. And then I say the opposite of what you don't want is what you want. Now, how committed are you to make a change? Because if you're not committed to make a change, there's nothing I can do. I could give you all this information, but if you're not willing to implement it, you're wasting your time and money with me.
But everybody says they're committed.
No.
Oh, yeah, Arash, I want to change and I'm committed.
Listen, everybody says they're all in. And I've been like that, so I could relate to it. So the great part of me is I've been on both sides. So I can have so many stories that I can understand. So I'll listen to them. Then even if they say yes, but they're telling me no emotionally, like I'll ask more questions. But the first thing I want to know is, do you want more? Do you want to improve your life? Do you want to improve your marriage? Do you want to improve your relationship? Do you want to get in the best shape of your life? So I can read people without them even talking. I could read their shoulder shrug. I could see it by their handshake. See, if somebody shakes my hand and they have a weak handshake, weak self-image, weak confidence. So I can pick up so many things. Are they looking me in the eye? So once I find out what they want, the next thing I do is ask more questions about where is their gap? Like where they are now, where they want to go, there's a gap in between. Do you lack discipline? Do you lack commitment? Do you lack understanding? People don't understand. They can have anything they want. But the two things they have to understand is how their mind works. Everyone knows they have a conscious mind and a subconscious. They've heard it, but they don't know how to use it. So most people are using it against them. So the first thing I do is teach them the three parts of their mind: their conscious mind, their subconscious, and their body. See, once you understand how to use it, then it becomes effortless because everything happens by law, not luck. If I was jumping off this building, I'd fall. But there's all these laws going to work behind the scenes that we can't see. See, what we have to understand, the evidence of absence isn't the absence of evidence. So we have to know what it is we want. Then we find the gap from where we are to where we want to go. The gap is always discipline. I don't care who it is. It's always commitment. You give me commitment and discipline, I could get you to absolutely transform your life.
So I want to talk about social media. And when I look at, really, this has permeated all the generations. Discipline and a commitment to consistency is becoming less and less of a characteristic trait of every single human. And I believe it has a lot to do with cell phones and our ability to get everything instantaneously or instantly. And, we have a whole generation that have now grown up with phones where they can look up anything they want in a matter of 2 seconds. When all of society is almost the antithesis of what you're describing, how do you help someone break through the monotony of that and commit to discipline? Because you can say you want it and you can think you're committed, but actually being committed, and I'm talking about they actually think they're committed and they try, but everything else is working against them. How do you break through that and create, as you talked about? Bob looked at you and said, I can see your results. And you even said, you started, you stopped, you started, you stopped, you started, you stopped. That's 99% of the world right now. How do you break that habit?
Number one, you have to have, before we get into breaking it, you have to want to break it. So you have to want something greater. That's why you have to have a want that it's worthy of you. And you have to have a magnificent obsession. See, when I grew up, I thought the word obsession was a bad thing. And I learned that obsession is a great thing if it's driven towards a certain end that's positive. So it's very easy for me to help clients break that because what I do is I have them track their week. And then I said, do your week as you normally do, and then send it to me. So they'll send it to me. And I said, let's go over hour to hour. And then all I do is measure it, non-productive activity, productive. And you'll see 25 hours, and I'm not exaggerating, are on social media. It's on gossiping. And I said, if you want to lose, keep doing this. So you have to give them an emotional impact, but you want to show it to them through their own behaviors. The people I work with want to change. They don't just say it. And I'm very transparent in my messaging. If you're not willing to do the work, then I'm not the right person for you. The work is overcoming our old self. See, discipline, like if I asked you discipline, what would your definition of it be?
Doing it consistently day in and day out.
Okay, that's the effect of it. That was mine. That was my definition. When I went deeper into this, discipline is in your thinking. The thinking is always the prequel to the action. So this is why when I had the worst discipline, because I was letting the outside dictate, I did it or I didn't do it. Discipline is about thinking in a certain way that you direct. So this is where accepting and rejecting ideas. The action is the effect. It's not the cause. The thinking is the cause.
So how does that thinking need to change? The way I just described discipline, you just said that's the effect. What specifically needs to change is this consciously or subconsciously or both?
It's both, but it starts consciously. You can't get to the subconscious without the conscious mind. But what I would do, the first thing I would say is ask you what your goal is. So I said, from now on, for the next 30 days, because I know if I can get you to do it for 30 days, I can get you to do it for 30 years. For the next 30 days, the only thing I want you to be so monomaniacally focused on is accepting and rejecting. So any idea that comes in your mind that is not in harmony with your goal, you reject it.
So pick a goal so that we have something tangible to discuss and better understand.
Okay, let's say you had a fitness goal. Yeah, let's say you said, you know what, Arash, I'm sick of starting and stopping. I want to get in the best shape of my life. So then you're going out and you're out with friends and you say, I'm going to have that piece of cake. And you're thinking, you go, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to go to the bathroom while they're eating. I'm going to drink a water. See, that doesn't serve you. Let's say somebody says, I want to be effective. I want to really track my hours like I was saying. Well, in your thinking, you're about to go on social media, that thought that says go on, you say, no, I don't accept it. Somebody says I'm not good enough. Cancel. Reject. I am absolutely good enough. I have infinite inside of me. Infinite never loses. See, we got to understand ourselves first. See, we have infinite inside of us. Where do you think the greatness comes from? I can't give you infinite. You already have it. So we've got to start working with it through our mind first. We have to define what we want. Our conscious mind is our educated mind. It's where our intellect resides. Our intellect creates our emotional state. In our conscious mind, we could choose any thought we want. We can accept and reject, and we can originate any idea. So why are people letting social media waste their time? Because they're choosing that. They're choosing it. Our subconscious mind it only can accept, it cannot reject, and it doesn't know if something's real or imagined. That's why you'll see studies of how powerful visualization is. What we want to do is have the conscious and subconscious work together. That's why you have to know what you want. Wanting it is not the end of the game, though. We've got to turn that want into a desire. It starts with need. I really need to do better. Then you turn it into a want. Now we've got to get emotionally involved with the want. You want to start disciplining your five senses to see, feel, hear, taste, and touch. Like in our example, like you're at the best shape. So you discipline your senses.
So what does that mean? So I want to get in the best shape of my life. How do I align those five senses, thinking about it consciously, and then moving to the subconscious and do exactly what you just described with that fitness goal?
So you've got to see yourself already achieving the goal. What would your body look like if you achieve that goal? What would you hear people saying, you look so good. You look so good. Like, what type of foods would you be tasting? What would you smell? I always say the air smells different when we feel good about ourselves. Like, it just smells different. But we want to connect a mood of how damn proud would you be of yourself that you did that. So we want to discipline our senses. Our senses are so sensitive. And that's where our old programming comes in, and it knows it's sensitive. The old program is not dumb. It knows it, so it'll say, go look at your results. It'll start getting into your old story. And this is where accepting and rejecting. No, I don't accept my old story. This is what I'm doing. I'm getting in the best shape of my life. I am looking good and feeling good. You know, you create an affirmation with it. But you have to discipline your mind again. So the senses are always looking at the outside. But you've got to understand, every time we're aspiring for something greater, the old program wants to keep us stuck. That's why people don't get out of their comfort zone. And the reason people stay stuck, they say, I want to get fit. I want more money. I want to open this business. But all they do is keep thinking, feeling, and acting from where they currently are. They're enslaved by their senses. So our senses are not good or bad. We want to understand our senses are for us to enjoy life. Our senses are for us to watch out for danger, but they're not for us to be making decisions. See, we've got to make an all-in committed, irrevocable decision. This is what I'm doing no matter what. And when the mind starts bringing you back, the old program starts bringing you back, say, I don't care. I've never done it before. Watch me. I am willing to do it. And then you start building one identity-based behavior after the next.
You make this sound so easy.
Well, I've been practicing it for 17 years. So I've got hundreds of thousands of hours of doing this. But I always say, simplify everything. Because to me, it is easy, but we can make something as hard or easy as we want. But if you want to live a world-class life, you can. And that's your definition of world-class. For me, it was freedom. Mm-hmm. I wanted to live my life doing what I want, when I wanted, with whomever I wanted, and often if I wanted. It was a big motivator. But we've got to get real good understanding. Nothing's going to change if you don't understand you. When you ask yourself really good questions, am I all in? That's a good question. But now let's make it a better question using our fitness goal. Am I all in at my future self already being the best shape of my life? So then we write out the characteristics. What does that mean? What would those characteristics be? I would follow a nutrition plan. I would have a healthy attitude towards myself. I would exercise. It's not big steps. These are little steps. Like creating wealth in terms of monetary is very easy. All you have to do is focus on your ability to do what you're doing and be great at impact, serving.
But some people, Arash, say, I don't know what. Let's take an example. I know lots of people who are stuck in the corporate world,
Mhm.
and they keep getting raises, just as you described,
Mhm.
and that's very hard to turn away from because they've got a family, they've got all these obligations, but they desperately want to start a business, and they want the freedom you're describing, but they are stuck in neutral and they don't know how to move forward. The number one question I get is, what business should I start? What would you say to someone like that? They come to you and say, hey, I want you to mentor me.
Well, the first thing I would say, in order for you to break out of the comfort, is you have to go bet on yourself. Until you bet on yourself, you're never going to be betting on your dream.
So they should just quit their job?
Not necessarily. My situation was extreme, but they can start building their game plan of what they want to do. They can start building their vision of seeing the business they want. They can start building the skill set that they're going to need to have to be an entrepreneur. See, we got to understand anybody can do it. Not everyone should be an entrepreneur. There's a lot of great people who are very well paid, very happy being a part of a team. See, to me, entrepreneurship comes down to two skills: belief and skill, upgrading skill sets. So that person, your language is a little interesting because if I was talking to them, you say, I really want to build this business. I really want to build a business, but I've got a family, but I have these things. Well, how badly do you want to build the business? Because there's a difference between living good or living your true purpose. See, if somebody wants to build a business and they're all in, it's an overtaking obsession. When we have a want, we've got to understand these wants, where they come from. The wants come from the essence of who we are. The essence of who we are is to grow. And the want starts in our subconscious mind, then gives a signal to our conscious mind. We pick up the idea. Now, our job is to accept it. If we don't accept that idea, I'm going to own this business, it's always going to be someday in the future when this happens. Well, guess what's going to happen? They get a 3% raise. They get a 5% raise. But they're still living in a prison because that's not in harmony with their true desire. The desire is going to keep showing up. And I could tell you, I was on a trip over the summer. I was in Portofino in Italy. My wife was taking a shower, getting ready. And I was sitting out overlooking the water. And this voice asked, I asked this question. I go, what was it that I really did? I don't know why I did this. I was just super neutral. And I said, what was the one thing that you could look back that really changed your life? And it was that I had the courage to bet on myself. Because my circumstance was I got offered another 6-figure job, literally, and they kept on hounding me to take it. I was one of the 2 people who got offered to stay at the new company. I was like, no. And I think when I said no to them, I said yes to myself. So I would ask the question for the people asking this: how badly do you want to build a business? And I never ask what you want to earn. I want to ask what is the purpose behind building the business? See, our why is so important with our goal. We've got to connect the why. See, that person doesn't have a big why in your example. If they had a big why, then that's going to motivate them because we're either driven by our why or why not. So when you have a goal, the first thing you have to do is connect a why to it. And you want the why to be through the roof. See, you have to want success as badly as you want to breathe, whatever that means to anybody. There's a great tale by Socrates. There was a gentleman who came to Socrates' lake house, and he said, I want to be as great of a philosopher as you. So Socrates takes him out to the back and he says, kneel down. He had a lake at his lake house. And he says, kneel down. He grabbed the gentleman by the back of the head and held his head underwater, and he kept holding it. Then he let him out. And he said, what was the first thing you thought about? He said, all I wanted to do was breathe. And he said, if you want to be as great of a philosopher as me, you have to want it as badly as you want to breathe. Listen, this isn't for the weak link. Not everybody wants to 10x their life, 20x their life. You got to be authentic with yourself. You got to be honest with yourself. Do I want more? See, for me, I know every single client I work with, if they do the work, they're going to get phenomenal results. And my clients get the results because the direction of what I give them to do. And is it easy? Not in the beginning. In the beginning, you're dealing with all these old paradigms. See, we've got to understand our paradigms control every part of our life. Today, you and me, unless we consciously were working on changing our programming, 95% of our day is already done before we even start. So if I could tell your listeners one thing to do that would change the game for them, is create an amazing morning routine. I have a free download on my website at vosscoachingco.com that I give them my morning routine. But what the morning routine does is it builds self-esteem, it builds discipline, and you already have 5 wins before anybody's even up. Well, how you start your day is how you own your day. If somebody was sitting there like that, they would improve if that's all they did. Over the next 60, 90 days, they would improve their self-esteem, they would go after bigger things, and they would elevate their standards.
What are the top 3 paradigms you see that stop people from being successful?
Not willing to get out of their comfort zone, not knowing what they want, and not committing. Decision making is so important. We've got to understand, most people think I made a decision, when this happens, then I'll do it. That's not a decision. A decision is always an unknown. You've never done it before. See, we want to go after something that's impossible, that we have to grow into that person to make it possible. Now, most people won't do that. Right now, it's the beginning of February. Most people on the planet set their goals this year based on what they ended in December. They may improve by 5%. They may improve it by 10. It's a waste of time. They think, if I work harder, then I'll do it. No, we want to make your life effortless. The more awareness you have, the better choices you make, the better the results are going to be. But we want to go after something really big. Well, in order to do that, we have to commit to the journey. Committing to the journey is not a destination. It's about changing your philosophy, changing your way of thinking, and being open-minded to how you've been raised and how you've always done things, and comparing it to your circle. It's about your standard. You have to elevate your standards. Standards create empowering beliefs. Standard is our commitment. It's our code of ethics. See, most people think, I have a great standard, but I dropped it. No, standards never drop. Standards are your commitment to yourself. So it's a line in the sand that will always lift you up and lift everything in your environment as you keep elevating your standards.
When you look into society, so much of what you're talking about is mental. It's all about the mind.
It's all about the mind.
And yet, when you look at our society, more teenagers are committing suicide. More everyone is committing suicide. More people are shrinking, as you said earlier today. And more people are lost mentally than we've seen historically. I mean, it's at epidemic record levels. What's going on?
Suppressed emotions. People are suppressing all their feelings. They're putting it in drugs, alcohol, putting it into TV, putting it into social media. They don't want to feel. We have to feel.
But where's that coming from? Look 50 years ago, during World War II or World War I, I would argue that the gist of society, in spite of everything going on, was people were generally happier, more satisfied. Well, we've increased the GDP of the United States many, many multiples since then. the standard of living for the average individual, not only in the United States, but across the world. And yet the happiness factor is through the floor. So what I heard you say is they're suppressing the emotions, but people back then had emotions. So I don't, what's going on?
Yeah, but you got to understand now it's become a cultural paradigm that it's okay to do that. It's okay for suicide. It's okay to go and shoot up a school. When that became okay is the problem. So then you see all these people following the crowd. And so it's okay not to feel good. I don't think it's okay to not to feel good. You know, if you look at how we started this with wealth, what do you think initiates wealth is feeling good. So it's become a standard that it's okay to feel bad because so and so felt bad. But what happens is when you go so deep with that suppressed emotion, it turns into depression. Depression is in your subconscious mind. So we have to build each other up instead of tearing them down. If you go look at social media, people are driven by, did they get a like? Did they not? Did they do this? Like, I don't spend much time on social media. Now, I have a social media page to give value to people, but I don't spend much time on it. The only time I'll ever spend on social media is to check about sports teams, you know, because I'm an avid follower of sports. But I don't spend any amount of time there. But what is there? It's toxic. So the population has accepted toxicity. It's become the norm. And that's what we have to break. But it has to be the individual has to believe in possibilities. That's why you'll see the world, 97% of the economy is earned by 3%. Well, those 3% are the outliers because they're doing the work. The 97% are suppressing. They don't have goals. They don't see a better opportunity. You know, somebody loses their job, they think it's the worst thing in the world. That could be the best thing. So we're looking at the wrong side of the road. So as a culture, we have to change and start blessing people's successes, lifting the people who are having a hard time up, and showing them there's a better way.
Arash, you've been very gracious with your time, and we're very thankful. You've given us a lot to think about. So just a few more questions for you. Give us, anonymously, of course, the best success story that you've been a part of with one of your clients.
That's a hard one because we've had so many.
A really good one, then. One that sticks out in your mind.
I'll tell you one that sticks out because he just messaged me. He was in the corporate world, using your example, and he was very successful. And he was in investment banking. And he said, I really want to change my life. And he got bullied as a young kid. And that was a story that we got over. And I said, if you continue doing investment banking, you'll live just like you're living. But that's not what you're coming to me. He goes, I don't want to. I want to quit my corporate job and create my own company. And I said, well, right now is the best time. You've got to make a decision. I talked to him a month later. He hadn't made a decision. I talked to him a few weeks later. He goes, okay, I'm about to throw up. And he made the decision. Well, he just texted me 3 days ago telling me that he tripled his annual income from what he did in the corporate world. And he did very well in the corporate world. And I said, anybody can do this. This is what I'm telling you. I said, now you're winning. I said, how can you 10x what you're winning? So imagine the impact you're going to create. I had an 81-year-old woman that came to me to be mentored. And I said to her, I said, why do you want to be mentored? She said, I'm so sick of living my life in fear. And I said, are you willing to do what I tell you? And she said, yes. And she goes, are you worried about my age? I said, I'm not worried about it because my mentor was in his 80s. So he changed my whole relationship to age. But I said, if you do it, everything will change. All she wanted to do was live on purpose before leaving this world. Well, she started mentoring people for free. She started just giving her wisdom for free. That is one of the best success stories. You know, but I have several. People have overcome sexual abuse. But to me, the fulfilling part is taking someone from where they are to where they want to be and watching them light up. Like literally their face changes. Their face changes. Like I just had an event here a couple weeks ago, and I had a client, Julio, and I saw him 2 weeks later. I mean, it was a different person. He goes, "You took off all the pressure I was putting on myself." See, we want to wake people up because we all have it, but we have to go do the work. If we don't do the work, it's not going to change. Reading the book is not doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
It's find a mentor and do exactly what they tell you to do. I'm telling you, the price you pay for it is going to be rewarded because you're going to spend the money it would cost to get the mentor anyway, and you're going to use the time. If you get a really good mentor, and you'll know if it's a really good mentor by how they stretch you. They bring their standard and inundate it in you and get you to see what's possible.
Can you do this without a mentor?
You can, if you're very disciplined, if you want to spend 10 years. Now, can you get incrementally better within 6 months? Yes. I tried to do it both ways. And I'll tell you this. I asked my mentor that same question. We were sitting at his house in Toronto. I said, "Do you think anybody can do this on their own?" He said, "Arash, what you and I could teach someone how to do in 6 months to 12 months would take somebody 10 to 12 years to do it on their own." Now, you'll watch people who are very successful. They're doing this unconsciously, but they don't know how they're doing it. So if that opportunity goes, then they say, "I don't know what I did." I had a client in Australia, and he said to me, he was a 7-figure earner, and he said, "I lost it all." And he said, "I don't know what to do." And I said, "Well, what did you do when you became a 7-figure earner?" He said, "I was in the right place at the right time." I said, he had no idea what he did. We have to measure everything against our daily processes. People are measuring the outside. See, the biggest thing that holds people back is they're letting the outside world dictate their attitude, dictate, are they worthy? Are they valuable? Can they do this? It's the wrong way to do it. We want to create really good processes. Once we measure against our processes rather than the outside world, winning happens by default. So you look at your day. You have processes, whether they're defined or not. Mine are defined exactly what to do. And that's what I do with our clients. So we create structure. See, if we're not in structure, then we're going to be all over the place. One day up, one day down. So this gentleman, I said, "You were an unconscious competent." So I had to start over at literally square one with him. And we had to build the foundation. The foundation, I call it the power of 5. It's decision first, then it's standard, disciplines, self-image, and attitude. Those are the 5. And any day, like you and I could go at the end of the day, okay, look at ourselves. And I'll give you guys a quick process that's very impactful. That I want you to put your goal in your mind right now, if you have a goal. And if you don't, you have to have a goal. Mm-hmm. But let's put our goal in our mind. And then the end of the day today,
I got it.
We do a review. We say, did I make decisions like the person who achieved that goal today? Did I practice my disciplines today like that person? So meaning 1% better, 1% more enthusiastic, 1% more expectation. Then did I hold my standards and did I elevate the standards of that person? Who, remember, we've already achieved the goal. We always measure it from the end, not to the goal. Then did I think, feel, and act like the person I would have been if I achieved that goal? And then did I have the most positive mental attitude? See, whatever that answer is, you don't have to be 5 for 5 every day. Let's say our attitude, we're like, listen, our attitude wasn't that great today. So the next day, we bulletproof our attitude. We say, I'm going to intentionally make sure I have the best attitude. And we've got to look at perception because we're not seeing the world as it is. We're seeing it as our programming is. If we just work on perception, that's one of our higher faculties. If we work on perception and bulletproof everything in our favor, you're going to start seeing a completely different world than what you're seeing right now.
Is one of the big things with a mentor accountability?
I think accountability is overrated. I think the greatest part of a mentor is showing someone exactly what to do and how to do it to get to where they want to become. Like I always say, I'm the worst accountability partner for somebody else because I'm busy. So people will always ask me, can you hold me accountable? Now I do with my clients, but your best accountability partner is yourself. If we start keeping small promises with ourselves, it's going to change the game. So you want to set a goal that you're going to make. One of the small promises be that I'm going to beat my personal best today. Then tomorrow you say, I'm going to beat my personal best today. And if you're measuring against doing that, now you're starting the day right. Most people don't start the day right. As soon as my feet hit the ground, I say to myself, I'm so grateful for today. And today's going to be the best day of my life. Now, that is a great way to start the day. You're going to have distractions. We are distracted so much throughout the day. You'll get phone calls, you'll get text messages, social media. So once we bulletproof our focus is one of the best habits we can build. Focus is built by our will. Our will is the ability to lock in on one idea without the distraction of any other idea. Well, you do that with focus.
Seven Figure Standard. It's a podcast that you started in April of 2023. If you guys haven't listened to it, I've listened to a few episodes. They're fantastic. They're exactly what Arash is talking about today. They can find it on all of their favorite audio platforms. If someone wants to reach out to you, become one of your clients, you have single mentoring, elite group mentoring, and then you have corporate mentoring, vosscoachingco.com. Is that right?
That's correct.
Fantastic. Anything else you want to share with our audience before we go today?
Well, I would tell you to really go deep with what I'm saying. Listen to this over and over again, because you're going to hear it one time, and then you're going to hear it the second time, you're going to pick up something different. You're going to hear it the third time, pick up something different. And I highly recommend you really think about what you want more than anything else. Don't have a lot of wants. Have one want. There's a great book called, you've probably read it because you're an avid reader, Good to Great.
Oh, yeah.
And
many times.
The author in this book talks about most people have too many priorities. And you want to have max three priorities each day where you're all in. But these are important, not urgent. Urgent is tasky. Important are the big ideas. But I would encourage you to really think about what you really want. Forget about how it's going to happen. Your spirit knows the how. We've just got to get that idea locked into your subconscious mind, and we've got to get into action. But I will tell you what everybody's doing right now, they can do better. There's another person inside of us that's dying to come out, but we've got to let that person out. And I remember I was sitting in a room not too far from here, and I didn't know my mentor at this time. I knew about him. I didn't know him, and I was sitting in the front of the room. And he said, I was at a 3-day seminar, and he said, some of you are going to feel good for a week, and then you're going to go back. He said, make a definite decision that you're going to be one of the 3% who does what I said this week. And I remember sitting there, and I had my hands crossed like this, and I said, that's going to be me. Now, I don't know what had me follow through, but it just hit me. So what I'm saying is, every one of you, if you want more, you can have more, but you have to become more. It's about you. It's not about what people think it is.
And step number 1, that's so key. Think about what's the number one thing you want, and don't worry about the how. That's really powerful, because we always think about, I want this. Okay, how am I going to get there? You're saying stop focusing about that. Make sure that what you want is what you want, and you'll figure out the how.
Yeah, but think about this. Think about, for all of you listening, there's something that you have created in your life that you never knew the how, but you were like, I am doing this no matter what. I'm going on this trip. I don't know where I'm going to get the money. I'm going to do X. So you've done it in the past. We've got to do it regularly. We've got to do it consistently. We talked about consistency earlier. What creates consistency is emotional discipline, where we are locked in to our thinking. Thinking is always the prequel to the results. Thinking is a currency. And we have to be willing to fail at our future self, then succeed at our past or present self. Now, that can take you on a number of ways if you really think about it. Everything you want it to be driven by your future self. That's the goal already achieved. What would that person do? And most people are not willing to fail, but it is absolutely critical that we have a great relationship with failure. You'll fail, big result. Fail, big result. But most people, they're not willing to fail. They're not willing to get out of their comfort zone. You have to get out of your comfort zone. I was talking to a gentleman yesterday, and I've been mentoring him, and he's in the health industry, and he said, I'm doing exactly what you're telling me. Everything is changing. I said, but you're still not going to get new clients. He goes, I've been rejected so many times. I said, rejection's part of the deal. Have a great attitude towards rejection. I want you to go do it because you're doing everything but the most important thing now. And I said, if you really do it, I'm telling you what's going to happen. See, we've got to start loving getting out of our comfort zone, sprinting towards our comfort zone, sprinting towards that future self. Your future self is going to be your greatest gift. It's going to be your biggest hero. Because, like we can look at ourselves today. Then let's look back at 2019 versions of us. Much different, right? But imagine if we started looking forward at 2025 version of us and getting advice from that person. What would we do? See, we've got to start thinking bigger. We've got to stop letting everything be third dimensional by our senses. We've got to start thinking about what we really want, because it doesn't take many years to create an exceptional life. Honestly, 12 months can change the game. 24 months of real commitment changes the way you're going to live the rest of your life.
When you talk about the getting out of your comfort zone, what is the biggest, maybe the one or two biggest things that people aren't willing to change or do to take themselves out of their comfort zone?
Well, they're not committed, number one. That's why they don't get out of their comfort zone. And they are so married to failing. They're afraid to fail more than anything else. But as soon as you get that feeling, that little sense inside, you got to do it right away. I get it all the time. I did an interview, about 6 weeks ago. And they said, from 5 years to today, what was the biggest change in you? I said, getting out of my comfort zone quicker. That was the biggest change 25x my life. And that's what it was even 10 years ago. Now, the more confident you become, the more aware you become, the more you understand the importance of getting out of your comfort zone. So getting out of your comfort zone is essential.
What did getting out of your comfort zone mean for you in the last 5 years?
Look, as soon as you have a feeling, you do it right away. I remember my mentor was an icon, like I told you. He passed away 2 years ago. And I was still at the company that we were working at. And I had to go run the events that he always ran. And I remember I was like, you just got to do it. Everyone's counting on you. And I did it. It changed the game. Like, even though I wasn't going to be as good as him, I wasn't going to be as effective. He'd been doing it for 50 plus years and really 60 plus years, but I stepped into it right away. I remember the other day, this is so small. I have a trainer, and I had just developed deliver my world-class wealth event. I woke up and I had a training appointment, and my mind said, call him and delay it. And I knew that was negotiating with myself. I knew, and I said, nope, I'm going to do it. As soon as I went into the gym, I said, he goes, are you tired, from the event? And I said, forget about that. I need this win today. I want you to push me as hard as you can push me. And it was our best workout of the year. But I could have went to comfort. I could have went to the story. That's on a whole new topic. Like, our stories create our identity. We've got to change the story. Make the story about how you really want to live. I want everyone listening to this, look at the story. Say, is this real, or is it an outdated version of me? Change the story. You'll be amazed how quickly your environment changes.
I love what you just said. It was all mindset.
Yeah.
You just changed your mindset in the instant you just described, and you had the best workout all year.
That's it. But 95% of success is mindset, 5% is strategy. Most people are working on, I got to get this strategy. I got to get this. They're working from their analytical mind. What do you think your analytical mind is? It's your old, outdated program. So we want to start coming from the new program. That's why I'm so big about letting the future drive the present. And right now, if your listeners right now do not have a healthy relationship with their future, they're afraid of it, they're in big trouble. I'm telling you this. You got to write out a kick-ass vision of yourself. Write out exactly how you want to live. Forget about the how. Once you write it, writing is so powerful because writing creates feelings. Feelings create actions. Actions create results.
Arash, this has been incredibly fantastic. Thank you so much. VossCoachingCo.com to see if you want to work directly with Arash or the principles. You can get that morning guide that you talked about for free, and then look up his podcast, The 7-Figure Standard. Arash, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Andrew Holland Podcast. Never miss an episode by subscribing to and liking our YouTube channel, The Andrew Holland Podcast, and by following and liking the show on your favorite audio platforms. Be sure to connect with us on X, formerly Twitter, A Holland Podcast. That's A Holland Podcast. So you can interact with Andrew, the team, and our guests throughout the week. Thank you again so much for listening. Have a great day, and we'll talk again soon.